Oh, hi there. Before we dive in, I just want to let you know that I am still learning, and with that learning comes me not realizing that my kitchen cabinets are often open when I'm filming. I know it looks terrible. I'm working on it. I will try to close them in the future. Also, I have not edited as much out of this video. I figure if you're actually watching this whole thing, then you probably don't mind if I ramble on a little bit. And I have timestamps if you don't like the rambling. And lastly, please give me feedback. Any feedback you have is so much appreciated. I'm really having fun doing this, and if you want to share it, give me comments. If they're negative, maybe make them kind. But honestly, any feedback will do. Thanks, and enjoy.
Hi! Hello, friends. Welcome to Laughing Spices. Today, we are going to make a pickle potato soup. Or I guess you could call it a dill pickle potato soup. A couple weeks ago, he got a dill potato soup from our local Town and Country, and no offense to Town and Country, but it was rather expensive. It was on the hot food bar, and while delicious, not quite worth like $12 for a thing this big. So I said, well, I'll make it. I was going to do a price compare, forgot, threw out the receipt, so not going to be the case, but I can guarantee you it will be cheaper than buying it off the hot food bar, but unfortunately we won't know exactly. If there's someone who says, I really want to know, believe me, I am desperate enough as a creator to, you say jump, I will say how high, and I will get those numbers to you. So if anyone in the comments, if you say it, I'll do it. I will go to the store, I will get all the numbers, and I will let you know how much this particular soup will be per ounce for, the average grocery shop. All right, let's get started. Another thing I really want to do on this particular recipe, I'm going to come over. What was I saying? I am following a recipe. I printed out one from the Healthy Vegan. I will put it on the screen and put it in the description who this recipe is from. However, I'm going to try to look at it very minimally. The reason being, I want you guys to see that I am someone who oftentimes will look at a recipe, especially when cooking, not baking, and say, okay, I kind of know the gist, and then just go from there. You really don't have to be so exact when we're talking about cooking. Of course, it is nice to make the recipe as prescribed. However, if you're at the end of the day, you're like, I really want to cook this, but I just don't want to, get all the measuring cups out, all the stuff, be exact. Once you cook a little bit, it's a luxury that you really can't afford. So just something to keep in mind. All right, we will get started. We have a beautiful lineup of ingredients. This recipe is vegan. However, I do not have veggie stock, so we will be using chicken stock. So of course, if you do want to make it vegan, don't use chicken stock. For the pickle portion of this recipe, I will be using Grillo's pickles, olive oil for my cooking fat, salt, pepper, fresh dill, celery, vegan sour cream. Now, most of it I'm going to use is this Forager brand that I really have liked. However, we also have this brand, this Kite Hill, that, no offense to them, I just don't like it as much. But we had some to use up, so we'll be using each of those. The recipe calls for a full cup of sour cream, and I will actually be doubling the recipe because we're hungry people. And carrots. And then, of course, for a potato soup, you gotta have those potatoes. Garlic. 4 cloves. Garlic. And then last, we got onion. We are gonna start by chopping all our stuff. I will start with the garlic, the onions, carrots, and a celery. That's not really starting with something, I guess, but it's another, I'm kind of on the fence as to if I want to put the dill. I think I'm just gonna put the whole dill stem in there. Because it will be cooked and softened, I'm going to mince it up. But often with herbs, you don't this isn't as pungent as, say, like the leaves are. However, that still tastes like dill, and I don't like wasting food. So I'm not just going to, it also takes a lot of time. I'm lazy. I don't want to peel it all off. So I'm just going to chop it up real fine once it gets soft in the soup. And another thing too, part of this recipe, the author recommends that you use the immersion blender, so you have some some potato chunks, but some of it's smoother. And so this will likely be either cooked and or blended. So I'm not worried about putting the stems in there. It's not a raw recipe. I need to sharpen my knife. All right. Cool. All right. I'm gonna. Ooh, that feels I can tell my knife was dull because that feels so much better. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was probably, my knife was probably dangerously dull before this. Don't you guys love how any recipe in the world, it'll be like, prep time, 10 minutes. Total cooking time, 1 hour. And then you make the recipe and you're like, well, my prep time was a little more than the 10 minutes. It was around 90, but that's okay. Getting that dill all fragrant. Oh, good. I got scared. I thought it wasn't recording. I was gonna cry real bad. Okay. YouTuber's worst nightmare. All right, got my dill done. Dill done. All right. I was just gonna lie to you guys and say that I'd already washed this onion, but I hadn't. I know I haven't watched this. Like I said, I'm doubling the recipe. Recipe calls for half an onion, so I'm just going to chop up this whole guy. Saying the word guy reminds me of my husband. When he was growing up, they had these things called cheese guys in their house where they would, he said it was, I think, he'd have to correct me, but I believe it was their most common side with any types of, like, with most soups, chilies, split pea soup, those types of things. And it was just essentially a microwave tortilla that was rolled instead of flat. You just put some cheese in a tortilla and roll it up, and it was very cute. He thought it was like a thing. Like when you go, oh, you know, you can have this on the side. You can have a cornbread muffin, tortilla chips, or a cheese guy. Like he thought it was kind of like that. He's like, a cheese guy's a thing. I was like, I don't think it's a thing. And I said, I think it's cute that it's your family thing. I'm not judging your upbringing for this. I'm just telling you it's not a thing. And then he looked it up and he looked at me and he goes, cheese guy's not a thing. And I said, all right. I've said this before, but the most cancer-fighting nutrients of the onion are closest to the peel. So I try to just take off the little layer I have to. But I probably could do better about that. But you don't want it to be like that tough skin, but you also just don't want to get all those nutrients. You don't want to lose all those nutrients. So I'll chop this pretty finely. I'm actually, like I said, I'm trying to not look at the recipe much, but I do know that she recommends doing sauteing the onions and I think celery first until they're translucent for a few minutes. And I'm guessing she would recommend them to be chopped pretty fine, and me cooking enough, I know that I don't want, it'll just make it easier to blend it all if I keep the onions pretty small. And also, it's really just going to like release some of that flavor, let the stuff cook in the onion juices longer if you know, give it a nice little mince there. I've cooked enough to know. I think that my guess would be, I bet she wants you to heat the oil over medium heat, then add the onion and the celery for a couple minutes until the onions are translucent. That would be my guess. And I've of course glanced at the recipe. I just don't know it well. Then probably add the carrots and garlic probably. Do that for a few more minutes. Then maybe the potatoes. I don't know. I guess my point is that the details in cooking matter. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like there's a reason that particular recipes have particular instructions, because it's an art and they, the creator made it that way. However, you also get to play, and sometimes making recipes, playing with it, whatnot, that gives you kind of the permission to go, I know what rules I can break, or what my preferences are, or what rules I just don't feel like following because I'm being lazy. Nothing wrong with that. Alrighty, I'm gonna move those to the side of the cutting board. This side of the cutting board, all the onions, please. Now I'm gonna chop up our celery. The recipe I know only called for 2 ribs of celery for 1 serving, and of course, as I mentioned, I'm doubling it. So that would be 4. I'm using more like 6 because I really like celery. And just like I was saying, I get to make my own rules. It's my soup. This is a Sawyer soup. Depending on how much time I have, sometimes I will, you guys know I'm a fan of the kitchen scale. Sometimes I will just track to see how much so that I can record it and see, okay, last time I used this much onion, last time I used this much, because then I can play around with it if I thought it was too oniony, whatever. However, that's not something I do all the time because sometimes I don't feel like it. Some days we don't necessarily want to have to measure everything, track everything, and so just kind of having that general range is fine. It just depends on your mood. Just the same way with following a recipe. Sometimes there is something very therapeutic and nice about just systematically checking something off the list as you make a recipe. And if that's you, more power to you. I just want you to feel free to know that you don't have to do that if you find yourself not always feeling that way. My gosh, I forgot the soy milk. Soy milk. Now I'm going to chop up my garlic and carrots. The recipe called for, it said 1 small carrot. I'm using 2 somewhat large to medium carrots because I like carrots. And so it'll be a little, there's Milton.
At the time of this recording, Milton had not yet taken on the role of sous chef here at Laughing Spices. That said, as we have gotten him onboarded, we've discovered that he doesn't have opposable thumbs and is unable to cut much or do any of the other sous chef responsibilities, so he will likely be terminating his relationship here with the kitchen staff.
Here we go. Now Billy comes. Milton's always first to the carrots. All right, Billy, I'll cut you off a little bit too. Here you go. He's smelling it first. This is not how I would ever recommend mincing a carrot. I did a terrible job. In case you didn't know, I didn't go to chef school, so I am not a properly trained chef. There's something so meditative about chopping, though. Makes me feel better knowing I'm gonna immersion blender a lot of this stuff. So if there are a few bigger chunks, not the end of the world. Right now for my garlic, I like to crush it like that first, then get the whole peel off. Way easier in my experience. I'll do that with all of them, and then I'll dice it up or mince it. Milton, you got an extra carrot. He is so cute when he chews. I'll have to show you guys sometime. I think it's because his teeth aren't very straight, and so he kind of has to really get in there to chew it up. My inkling, though. But he kind of it's very cute. Got all the peels off those 4 cloves of garlic. I added the normal amount of onion and garlic to this. I love onion and garlic. I have to be somewhat careful with big chunks of it. While very beneficial for gut bacteria, I have a very sensitive stomach, and so sometimes avoiding what we'd call the FODMAP foods is helpful to me for digestive reasons. But it's kind of a fine line, because if you do have IBS out there, which don't get me started on what it actually means to have IBS. That'll be a whole other video. But it's kind of a fine line, because oftentimes people who are easily bloated and stuff will be instructed to avoid higher FODMAP foods, onion and garlic being two of them. However, avoiding those foods forever is going to starve your gut bacteria. The reason that they make you bloated is because they get your gut bacteria kicking. They're prebiotics. They are feeding that gut bacteria. They're feeding the probiotics. So it's a fine line. I'm going to turn this on medium heat, get that heated up, then add my oil. I'm going to tidy up, and I am going to add the onion and celery before I chop my potatoes and stuff, because there will be plenty of time to do that. I'm not getting ahead of myself, I promise. I think I'm being very responsible. Right. Great. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons. Now, the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I don't want it particularly too, I don't think I'm going to double it. I don't want it, I don't know. I just don't know if I'm going to need 4 tablespoons of olive oil. I can always add more, so let's see how this goes. Right, there's 1. That was kind of what I'd consider a heaping tablespoon. And there's 2. So that was 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And olive oil doesn't have like that low of a smoke point, so I don't want to ruin the oil, of course. So it looks like this is pretty hot. This pan tends to get pretty hot. I'll add the onion and garlic, or onion and celery. Yummy. Smells delicious already. There's that. All right, I'm gonna cover this. The recipe doesn't mention it. It just says to saute, but I'll cover it for a bit. And I'm gonna set a timer for 5 minutes, check on it. I don't think it'll, matter that much. I know I'm gonna add the carrot and garlic together, so I'm just gonna push those to the side. And actually, you know what I'll do? I'll put them in the bowl. Get all this space for my potatoes. Put that next to my dill, and then I'm gonna chop the potatoes. My guess is she probably would recommend just kind of quartering them, because the recipe calls that you take some of them out. And you don't want to go too small, because then they'll just be falling apart, which would kind of be fine. I don't know, part of me doesn't want to do the whole taking them out, not just because it's more work, but it may be slightly one of the motivators. The other reason being that I kind of do like that more kind of, I don't know if I necessarily want a chunky potato soup. I don't know. It sounds kind of good for it to be more of a smooth operation. And the nice thing with the immersion blender too, you get to decide how smooth you go. I almost always replace potatoes in recipes, in life in general, with either a sweet potato, a Japanese sweet potato, a regular, or a purple Japanese sweet potato, or a white one. Because they're more nutritious, honestly. However, for a dill potato soup, you gotta go with the yellows. I'm just moving my onion and celery around there. I'll uncover it now. That smells good. All right, we're about 5 minutes. I would say the onions are fairly translucent. I'll show you. That's what we're dealing with right now. Here, let's see. I'll close my lazy Susan. That is one thing I'm trying to work on when I cook for you guys. It looks very unattractive if I leave cabinets open, so I will try not to do that. It's kind of cutting off my head, but until I get the Meghan Markle set up, it's not going to be perfect, so hopefully you get the gist. All right, I am going to add those carrots and garlic. I'll just set a timer for 2 minutes, but not necessarily necessary. And then next, I believe, I'm not going to look. I think we're just going to add the dill, the potatoes, probably the pickles and the pickle brine. I love these silicone spatulas. They're great for not scraping your pans to a crisp, or what I'm trying to say. All right, give that another minute. And then I'm going to add my dill, my potatoes. The recipe calls for 5 pickles, so I'm going to use 4 to 5. So I'm going to use 10 since I'm doubling it. And I'm not going to go on the low end. I'm going to go on the high end because I love pickles. And this would be also, if you want to get real fancy, you could make your own pickles, use homemade ones. If you do that, please tell me. And I'm impressed. That's what I can say. Oh, based on this recipe, it seems like it's going to be pretty dang pickly. I think it's going to be very dill forward of a recipe, I think. I have an extra thing of pickles out in the back too if I run out of pickle brine, but hopefully that'll be enough. Pickles are expensive. That's one thing. That's my timer. I don't know. Sometimes they're really expensive, you guys. I don't know. In this economy, always having pickles in the house is kind of a luxury. It took me a long time to realize this, but I had this realization in my early 20s that I wasn't as wealthy as my parents were when I was growing up because I could not afford the amount of pickles that we kept in the house. Crazy. All right, getting my potatoes in there. We're supposed to add the dill at the same time. Get not too worried about it. Sometimes if I'm behind on my adding, I'll just reduce something or take it off the pot just so it kind of at least slows down the cooking. I'm going to chop up my pickles. I'll add a cup of this. I think we'll have enough. Get my cup out here. Go. Perfect. That's a cup, right? Yeah, that's a cup. Okay, we'll add that. And then I'm going to chop up my pickles and add those. Probably should have done them earlier, but I didn't, so. Always double check. My stove is completely off on this side. Just something to keep in mind. Don't put a wood cutting board on a hot stove. I have to tell myself as I tell you. Luckily, pickles are nice and easy to cut. So, put those on in there. All right, let's get that heated up. Get some of these pickles pulled apart. I should have used a bigger pot, you guys. Jeez. This is going to be crunched. This is going to be crunched because this is... So, it's supposed to be 7 cups of this. I mean, it'll just be tight. It'll be fine. It's just, I should have used a bigger soup pot, which I really need one. I don't have a good big old soup pot. Because I used some extra potatoes, if I have room, I'm probably just going to do 8 cups of broth. But I might wait a bit to add it. When this boils off a bit. So let me bring this to a boil, bring that on high, and then I'll bring the camera closer so you guys can see it. That's what we're dealing with. I'm waiting for it to come to a boil. And you can see I got my big potato chunks in there, my dill, my celery, all the stuff. As obviously you know what it is. But so that will come to a boil. I haven't added my other 4 cups of broth yet, but again, should have used a bigger pot. My bad. All right, we will wait that out. Great, I waited a couple minutes and now we are bubbling. So I will let this guy do its thing. I'll reduce the heat once it gets to that full raging boil and we will come back in 30 minutes. Again, have only added the 4 cups of the broth so far because I used way too small of a pot, but I'm hoping that this kind of boils off and then I'll add more. And now I'll reduce this down a little bit to medium so it's not bubbling all over my stove top. But all right, see you back here soon. It's been 30 minutes now. That's embarrassing. You can see our beautiful rebounder trampoline over there. All right, hopefully this has enough charge. I have decided to just emulsify all of the potatoes because I don't really care to take them out. I have not added all the extra broth, but I'm going to add that in with the milk because I did choose to make this in such a small pot. But as you can see, it boiled down quite a bit. So get the child lock on this off on this thing. And if you keep it low, then you won't make a mess. It's when you keep it on and then lift it, that's when you get in trouble. Child lock on this thing gets a little annoying. I mean, I want the kids to be safe as much as the next person, but come on. You can definitely see how this needs more liquid because it's basically like mashed potatoes right now. I think this is plenty smooth. I'm just giving it a once over. There might still be some chunkage in there, but that's okay. I'm going to get this all cleaned off. Don't want to get your, don't want to waste all that precious good. Oh my gosh, it smells really good. What I'm going to do now, I have my milk. Here is my 2 cups of soy milk. I'm going to get that in there. And then, oh, my dishwasher's done. I'm also going to add some broth. Maybe not all of it yet, but some of it. See how much I can fit in there. Not a fan of this camera angle because I can't get over the pot. This would eventually give me a sore back, but that's okay. Camera stuff is not my forte. Not my will forte.
Okay, there we go. I'm just going to let that simmer a bit and add a little... Oh no, it's going to spit all over my stove. So I'm just going to put a little... There. There we go.
And this will cool it down a bit. It'll stop sputtering. Add some more of the chicken stock. I'll just add that much. And then maybe add the rest when that boils down again a little bit. Or maybe I'll just keep it at that. That's probably enough, honestly. It's a good consistency now. That's probably, I bet that's about 6 cups. And if I had doubled the recipe proper, it would be 7 cups. So I'm okay with that. You can see there's still some chunkage. Looks pretty nice. And then I'll just add the sour cream in a couple minutes, maybe about 10 minutes, and then it'll be done. And if I remember, I'll hopefully get a reaction video of when we eat this for dinner.